Well, welcome, Mindscape artist. How are you? I just finished up some readings, and whenever I do that, I usually am inspired to share something. So I'm going to just share an excerpt from my second book, 25 Thoughts About Your Soul, where I basically break down all the work that the soul has to do in order to bring the parts of us together, right? Because the soul is like this bridge that kind of ties us to the subconscious and the super subconscious and this world that we know in this 3D reality. So the soul is kind of pulled in two different directions, and it has a mighty job. And the soul does all of its work by taking energy from that super subconscious, which is source, to that subconscious, which is spirit, or the breath, right? And it takes that energy and tries to bring it into material manifestations. And what really got me deeper into the Bible is pulling it out of religion and taking it into its metaphysical meaning so that I could directly apply what's in it and have fun with it and experiment with it. And the portal that the soul has to go through to get into this dimension is the mind. Has to get through the mind. Thus no man cometh to the Father except through me. I want you to remember that text. I'm not going to say where it comes from because you can Google it, because again, I don't necessarily quote scripture for the sake of quoting scripture. I'm pulling out the concept of the scripture. Okay, so when you hear no man cometh to the Father except through me, we're often tied or anchored or bound by the thought that we have to come through Jesus Christ, meaning that we have to be Christian, right? Well, in order to pull away from that so that you can actually utilize the principles on a quantum physics level, right? In other words, take it out of the box and free it and become the great alchemist that you are. Um, the soul has to break through the traditions. It has to break through culture and experiences and religion and the feelings that you have attached to your experiences in order to deliver source to the perceived reality of this third dimension. So it has to bring all of this together, right? Well, the main problem that the soul has to deal with is it has to um, the mind thinks that it knows, right? However, the mind only thinks, but only the heart knows. Okay, this is the metaphysical minute that I'm bringing you. It's not going to be long. It's just a metaphysical minute, right? So that you can take little tidbits and practice using them yourself. So, this is where Christ consciousness lies, which is in the heart, or Buddha consciousness, whatever spiritual leader you choose. Consciousness is just being aware of, and if you put Christ there or if you put Buddha there, someone who has given an example of right actions. That's all that is, right? Christ consciousness just means that you are aware of the actions or the spirit or the essence of, of Christ But if there's another leader or example that makes you feel comfortable, that you identify with, use it. You're not bound. And that is where the deconditioning comes in. So the soul has to go through Christ consciousness to get back to the Father, which is Source. Once this process is complete, alignment can happen. This is why we call it the soul's journey, because the soul constantly travels between you and the Father through Christ consciousness. Now, it takes a moment to rewire your brain to be able to put the concepts together. All you have to do is become bilingual, right? You need to take the words that you have been taught that means one thing and apply them to an attribute that attaches to something inside of you. That's what metaphysics is all about. Being able to pull these big concepts out of the sky and turn them into these little meta things that lock to an attribute or function inside of you. And you attach that to that and you make it work according to the code that is given. Okay? So when somebody says, "No man cometh to the Father except through Christ," you will have a totally different meaning. Your meaning will be relaxed. Your meaning will also be rooted and grounded in your own experience, because once you experience your soul taking this journey, right? And really it takes this journey a lot. But what happens is because you're so conditioned into tradition and culture and politics and all these things, what happens is you drown it out and you tell yourself this is not what this is, right? But it really is. It is your soul trying to make that connection between you and the Father at all times, right? Now, what happens is when you move out of the way, well, you are the who you think you are. Who you think you are. If you can get past who you think you are, what normally happens is the soul is able to have an easier journey to bridge you with your higher conscious, your super conscious, your super subconscious, right? And that subconscious, that God, spirit, father, mother energy, okay? Now, many people come here with hang-ups about their childhood, right? Childhood. Now, we talked about in my live video, we talked about child and the fact that children stay in delta and alpha and theta states of awareness, which are basically hypnotic states. Delta being the lowest at 0 to 2, where they're just being, right? And then theta, if I'm not mistaken, is that middle portion. No, alpha is that middle portion where they start going into themselves. No, alpha is the middle portion where they start going into their inner self. And then that theta is the portion where they come into their analytical self, where they're actually connecting their inner self with the outer world. Well, when the Bible talks about be ye as little children, It simply means that delta state or that alpha state where you're not being critical, where you're being open, where you are allowing, where you are giving the soul permission to move between the source, right, and you, to create that union, that alignment, right? But when you live in a world that is driven by a lot of conditioning, and you think that you are your religion, or you think that you are your political affiliation, or you think that you are your racial experience, or you think that you are your a mother or a father, you think that you identify with these things strongly, and you think that these things are you, right? Well, when the soul comes to bridge you with source, it has to go through all of that. So this is why meditation and hypnosis is very important, because both of them can take you to the delta and the alpha state so that you can move those things aside and allow that pathway between source and you to be free of distractions, right? Um, this is why also it's very important to make sure you're in a correct relationship with yourself, but correct relationship when you decide you want to be with someone else, because relationship can often derail us. And it's not an excuse, because you're going to need to be able to work through relationships. Just like you got to be able to work through your job. You got to be able to work through paying bills. You got to be able to work through parenting. You got to be able to work through life, right? But oh, how sweet it is when you're in relationship, in union with someone who understands this process. Because being and connecting with source requires alone time. It requires meditative time. It requires downtime. It requires for you to separate, right? So if you have a partner that's very codependent, very egotistical, very much into themselves, very needy, right? You will have a hard time finding that space to commune. Because when you think of the example of Buddha, when you think of the example of Christ, when you think of the example of Krishna, when you think of the example of any spiritual leader or guide, they required some downtime. And we've gotten so caught up in this life of moving and being and thinking and doing, and it's too busy. It's too busy. So what often happens is the soul tries to travel from this higher place of being through this Christ consciousness into the mind to get it all deconditioned so that it can make this connection and align you with source and give you the desires of your heart. And it can't get through. This creates what we call frustration. Because there's a part of you that is aware that your soul is at work. There is a part of you that is aware that your soul is at work. But there's also a part of you that won't allow the soul to get through to do what it needs to do in order to unite you with your highest power. And the reason why you won't allow it is because you have made a habit out of distracting yourself from yourself. So what happens is you will find that spirit will try to unfold events that get us by ourselves, so that the soul can do the work that it needs to do in order to unite you with the higher source. And every time we go through an event where we lose or perceive a loss, where someone abuses us to try and push us away, where there's some perceived failure and we keep trying to do the same thing, but spirit is trying to push us in another direction and get us to ourselves so that it can work with us. We look at it as a challenge to keep pushing through, right? When in actuality, we need to have the discernment to know when we need to surrender. Surrendering is not quitting. Surrendering is not giving up. Surrendering is making space for the soul to bridge you to the Father, to the source. Right? So when someone pushes you away, when you get fired, when you go through a divorce, when you go through the death of a loved one, when you go through any disappointment, that is an opportunity for you to clear out, because what happens is disappointments are spirit's way of creating moments of deconditioning. So if you're constantly identifying or conditioning yourself to a relationship, then you're putting that relationship before your connection. Okay? If you're constantly identifying or connecting yourself to a job, you're putting that before the connection to you and you. Okay? This gives new meaning to not letting anything come between you and source. Because when you do, you don't operate properly, right? What happens is you're operating through something else that's not you, right? You're operating through a relationship that's not you. You're operating through a job that's not you. You're operating through a religion that's not you. You're operating through a political construct that's not you. You're operating through family that's not you. You're operating through things that aren't you. The mind is tricking you into believing that those things are you. But Source is trying to get you and shake you from those conditionings through death, through divorce, through disappointment, right? So when it seems like things aren't going your way, look at it as an opportunity for awareness. Look at it as an opportunity for detachment. Look at it as an opportunity to get with yourself so that you can meet your higher self and bridge that gap through the soul. Okay? This is going to help so much when things begin to uh, seem like they're not working out. And you literally, when you change your perspective to this paradigm, you get excited. You say, okay, this isn't working out. That means there's something better. Oh my God, I can't wait to see what it is. Now, of course, we're not going to feel like that if we lose a child to death. I think that's probably the only thing that I can't comprehend, don't want to comprehend. Yeah, I don't quite, I'm not there. Okay, I'm not there. Don't even want to get there. If, whatever I need to learn before it gets to anything like that, I will learn it. Okay. And you, I'm sure, will too. God bless you and all of your children. And may God continue to bless their lives and give you health and life, health, and strength and prosperity in that moment. Um, But yeah, you begin to get excited about things not working out. And you're like, wow, I applied for that job. I didn't get it. I know for a fact that this is unfolding into something better for me. But the reason why I didn't get it is because there's still more opportunity there for me to unite with my higher self. And then you continue to decondition and clear the way for the soul to come through and bridge and make that connection, you know? So this is a metaphysical moment, a paradigm shift, right? So that you can begin to change the concept of yourself. Self-concept rearranging, which is what mindscaping is all about, because anybody can give you any technique and you can work it for a little while. But if the concept you have of yourself is negative, if you're attached to something that's not you, right, that's pulling you into the not self, whatever technique you're getting, you're not going to stick with it. Something's going to sabotage it. Because the moment you are yourself, meaning you are in alignment with the source, anything you do, whether it's a diet, whether it's a money-making technique, whether it's writing a book, whatever it is, you're going to knock it out the park. You're going to stick to it. It's going to become you, right? So remember to rearrange the concept of yourself, number one, by knowing what you are attached to and not attached to. Really, you're not attached to anything. By understanding disappointment is totally an opportunity to do things bigger and better. By understanding that when things happen that don't go the way that you want them to go, that's source trying to actually get you to decondition from that. There's a conditioning that attached you to feeling like you have to have it that way, right? Examine that conditioning, clean it up, right? And then once you do that, you move to a much higher purpose. As you move to a higher purpose, your vibration gets higher. And when your vibration gets higher, your manifestations get bigger. Okay? So in the meantime, reconstruct the world by reconstructing your mind. I know you can do it. Bye.